Good afternoon, accelerators. It's Diane. It's another Mindset Monday, and I want to share with you an epiphany that I had when I was putting together a free PDF download that is probably going to be available this week. I'm not really sure. We have to pretty it up so it actually looks like something really gorgeous that you would want to keep forever. But meanwhile, what I wanted to do is share a little story about my background. And we're going to spin the timeline backwards all the way back to when I was in college. And I was in my last semester of college. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I loved the courses that I was taking, which were mostly in business and marketing. I was really jazzed up about anything that involved me supporting other people in the classroom. So I really liked anything that had like small group discussions, small group reports, providing feedback, sharing, that sort of stuff. But I ended up graduating a year later than I was supposed to. Now, part of the reason, I'll admit, is that I took a semester off. But that was even before I had changed my major to business. The reason that I didn't graduate an equal 4 years from when I started, losing that semester, which meant I would have graduated in December of 1980, is because I was involved in a fundraiser at my college that I loved. And I really wanted to chair it one more time instead of passing over the controls to somebody in a lower grade. The fundraiser was something called the Fiji 24-hour relay marathon. And it was crazy nuts. And for somebody that's not an athlete, it was even crazier that I had come up with this idea and could put it into place and have it have a 3-year history by the time I graduated. But just in a nutshell, various teams would enter, and the rule was that nobody could run longer than a mile. This was indoor in the field house, and you had to take turns, okay? So after you ran a mile, then somebody else on your team would run a mile, and somebody else on your team would run a mile, and you would go through, and the maximum number of team members that you could have would be 10. So your opportunity to run would come up every 10 miles, all right? Which for most people was less than an hour, all right? So you were running an hour, or you were running a mile every hour for 24 hours, which if you know anything about muscles tightening and muscles loosening and warming up and stretching and all that other stuff, is absolutely excruciating. And it probably would never happen in today's world. But this actual event was the basis for something called Relay for Life. And in the last year that I did it at the University of Maine, we donated the proceeds to the American Cancer Society. So some of that event still lives on to this day. But the bottom line, I promise I'm getting to a point here, it has to do with mindset and motivation, is that when it was time for me to start looking for a job after I graduated from college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I ended up going to the career planning and placement office, and I took a test. And the test, I don't even know if the organization still exists, but it's not important. I took the test, and the test asked me all kinds of questions about things that I enjoyed and things that I was good at, and whether I liked being around people or whether I liked being by myself. It was kind of a personality test and a Myers-Briggs test and kind of a career skill funnel all in one. And at the end of taking the test, it asked, is there anything that you want to tell us that we haven't asked you? And I wrote in really big letters that all I wanted to do, this is what my life goal wanted to do, was get paid to be a volunteer, okay? Because I thought that if I could be a professional volunteer, then I could support my family, I could support myself, I wouldn't have to get a real job, but basically what I would do is run events for charities, organizations, universities, hospitals, whatever. And I would be the person that would be in charge of those events. So lo and behold, spin the wheel forward. Now that whole industry actually exists, and it's with you're raising money for an organization or a hospital or university, it's called development or fundraising. And if you're doing it on behalf of a private individual or a private corporation or a business, it's called event. Now, who would have thought that years later I would end up in something that's related? I'm a vendor as a face painter. I'm a vendor to the event planning industry. But the reason I'm telling you this big long story is because I want you to think about how would you get from where you are today, not being able to do what you love, to something else that you love just as much, that includes your current skill set, but actually can enable you to support your family or your dreams or bring in money for vacation or whatever your financial goals happen to be. And that is the thing that I'm going to help you move towards. Some would say it's a pivot. And maybe it is, because pivots can happen in all different directions. They can be little small pivots that are slightly different from where you were, such as going into yard art instead of being a balloon twister online, like for queuing and parties. Or it could be a more dramatic shift, like instead of being a face painter, you're now a pet portrait painter. Or it could be that instead of you doing the activity, you're now teaching the activity. So you're teaching people to paint on canvas, or you're teaching people to paint faces. All right. So those are all different magnitudes of pivoting, but it's a brand new business. And one of the things that I realized, and it's really hard for us to come to face with it, is I actually think face painting is not going to happen for a good long time. And I know that is really controversial of me to say, but I don't feel like we can wait for that day. So I want to help you find something else to do, and call me, I don't know, a pivot master, a pivot guru. I've done it at least 3 major times in my life. And if you count the times that I changed from job to job to job within the same company, you can add in 11 or 12 more pivots in my lifetime. And each time I had to think about, where was I now? What do I want to get to? And what are some of the steps that are in between? Who can help me? What resources I need? Do I need to spend money? Do I need more education? Do I need to change the way I look or talk or feel or stand? So I am going to teach you how to come up with that next thing. You already know the why of why you need to pivot. You already probably know that you need to pivot, but I am going to take you through a process, a very methodical, strategic process that is going to lead you to your next thing. Now, it might not be the next thing forever, because people don't just do the same thing for 30, 40 years anymore. But your next thing is the next most important step that you will take in your career path, if I can use that term. Okay. Some would say that a pivot is this notion of a plan B, but I want you to get that out of your head. It's not a plan B, because plan B presumes that plan A was a failure. All right. And I don't want you to think about the fact that face painting was a failure. All right. I want you to think about the fact that maybe COVID and the pandemic is basically making you capable of change in a way that you never would have considered before. That your plan A is actually going from party entertaining to whatever your next thing is. All right. That the pivot itself, is actually your plan A. And Most importantly, what I'm going to teach you to do is figure out how you can make a bigger impact with whatever it is that you're going to go to next. Okay? I want to encourage you to watch these live videos this week. I'm going to talk more about the subject, and I am going to teach you to I can't even say, I'm so excited. I'm going to teach you to manage the pivot process with focus, fulfillment, and fun. Now, I would share who wins the Caption This Photo contest. I did remind people that they could not use the phrase "the elephant in the room," but I did want to announce that the winner of last week's photo caption contest is Meg Billington. She took a look at that picture and said, "Does this room make my butt look big?" And I thought that was a tremendous caption. And as a runner-up or honorable mention, it's Flora Doodle. And what she said was, "You can ignore me, but I won't go away." And that's how I want you to think about me as your pivot master. See you next week.